You have this process of transition when you go into culture shock, and you can get stuck somewhere. You can have anxiety, can I cope? And then you might think at last something's going to change. And then you wonder what impact this will have and how it will affect me. And then you feel like you feel angry. You might feel happy, and then you feel fear and anger, threatened and guilty. Did I really do that? What a mess I've made. Who am I? This is when you sink really into depression. You can veer off into denial and put your head in the sand. You can feel really disillusioned and feel this isn't for me, and then just leave the field if you go off on long-term missions. You just can't cope. Or you can gradually work your way out of it and start to fit into the culture, see yourself there, try and adapt and accept it, and it can be good as you move forward. Or these other ones, you can just become complacent and not really fit in. You're just there, but you're not there. Or you can become completely hostile to where you are. And you can try and work it out, not in God's grace. And that's not good. But some preliminary stages you can do is learn about the host, the culture, preparation for the journey, hence doing the research paper, really learning about where you're going to. And when you arrive, you know that it's going to be exciting, probably, but the novelty will wear off. And then when you become irritable and you can't cope with these simple everyday things, everything seems foreign, you know that this is happening, this is culture shock. And then again, when you return home, you realize that you've changed and you need to change and adapt, and your old set of values remain, and there's another set as well. And so you function in the culture, and then it becomes familiar and you gradually adjust. So if you've been a missionary abroad for a long time, generally you would have a gradual re-entry into your country. And there's, like Anna does debriefing, it would be a good idea to go somewhere and have a really proper debrief and re-entry and really help process what's happening as you return. And again, this is a psychological adjustment. You have your honeymoon, you have your conflict and culture shock, and then as you recover and adjust, and then you do this again when you go home. So when you travel, remember that a foreign country is not designed to make you comfortable. It's designed to make its own people comfortable. That's a quote. So what can we do to embrace the culture we are going to before going or while we are there?
Lots of preparation and study.
Yeah, preparation and study in what?
Like, I think it's stuff like our research paper. Not exactly that, but it's taking in the knowledge of what that area is like, what do those people value.
Yeah, their belief system, yeah.
We can take that kind of stuff on and have that. I don't think it can necessarily take away the culture shock, but it can soften the blow, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And how will we do that?
I think looking it up, studying, researching. I think For us specifically, it's, you know, talking with people who have been to the nation before, or
Yeah.
reaching out to people who have been there or who are there but have maybe an understanding of our culture, and so to help us adapt, hey, this is what's going to be different about you guys when you go over to Tanzania or Korea or Lebanon or wherever.
Yeah. 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 So also the history of the people is important. So it's not just what's happening now, it's actually what's happened years ago too. Whether have they been in wars and what's yeah, all the history. And being aware of what culture shock is, what culture stress is. Anything else?
Embracing it, not running away. There's like a rule when we sent out long-termers that we would recommend or ask them not to leave the country for a full year. And with that, they would have to like go through holidays, go through certain things like that, to where it was like all the hardest parts we were intentionally processing with them, but they weren't avoiding it, because like running home during that time, it can be like, oh yeah, you're constantly having to go back into the culture, re-assimilate, and then it hits you again. So I think like when you're doing that, if it is long term, just like really leaning into it. And if it's short term, not using when you leave as an escape, really processing with the Lord. I think like being Holy Spirit led and getting a heart for the people daily, like even if it's just a repetitive prayer of like, Lord, give me a heart for the people, let me see them how you see them. And then going out, I think can really help with culture shock, because you remember why you're there rather than all like the burdens or whatever. It's like, no, the person who made the food that I'm annoyed by is the reason I'm here, not necessarily the food itself, and being reminded that way.
Yeah, it's interesting in this lifestyle with aeroplanes, it's so easy. We go somewhere and we fly back in a year and see friends, whereas years ago, when they went, that was pretty well it.
Well, even kind of goes along that, I heard this article about how Netflix is a real damage to missionaries, because the mission will go to a foreign country and they experience that like comfortableness, and instead of like spending the first few months like kind of pushing through it and going out in the culture and where they start to get normalized to it, they'll isolate and watch Netflix, and so they're instead of flying back to their culture, they're just still absorbing themselves in their culture through Netflix, and it actually like prevents them from integrating into the nation they're trying to be a missionary to.
Yeah, so they're trying to find a comfortable space for themselves. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Oh. We can learn phrases in the local language as well. And maybe when we're there, start having classes. And then we're relating to a local as well as learning the language, which can really help. And not passing judgment on people, all the strange habits that people have. Trying to understand and learn about who people are, which is the relational part, really understanding. I think Nick, who is from Africa, who I mentioned him before, and he said that when he asked his tribal people who their favourite missionary was, who would come, they said it was the one who needed something. So it was actually the missionary who didn't come with all their own stuff and was there to give but needed nothing. But those who didn't have and actually needed help in some area, because then they were relating and asking for help, and the others were able to contribute and help them in some way. So that was interesting and makes sense, because of if they're very hot climate culture, if someone just comes with their own resources, they're just individual and they have everything. And we can cause immense pain if we don't understand a culture. An offence simply by saying yes or no, or requiring a yes or no answer. God created diversity, but he also expects unity. And this can be a challenge. But it's possible for, as we know within YWAM, it's possible for people to work together in different cultures. And that's why we go out and we go and be missionaries. It's just harder and more challenging. And you may have noticed when you're away that people from the West are more inclined to gather together and be together, and people from the East will be more inclined to gather together. So I mentioned to you when I was in Africa, when the Koreans came out, and the Korean immediately wanted to be with her own people. And if you're in a country, or if people are in a country where there is someone from their own nation, they're more inclined to want to hang out because of the culture, because it's what they're used to. But you will find other missionaries, when they really want to adapt and be part of a country, that they will avoid their own culture. And so when other people from their own country come, they will try and avoid them in order to integrate into the culture that they're at. But it's a normal inclination to want to be with your own people.